Hello students, welcome to EPG Patashala. I am Dr. K.R. Ram Mohan, Associate Professor, Head Department of Anthropology, Sikkim University. Today we are going to talk about a module on culture and personality studies from the paper Theories and Methods in Social and Cultural Anthropology. Before we go this module, let us see what are the learning outcomes of this interesting and important module. To develop an understanding about the concept of culture and personality, to gain knowledge about the beliefs and views of the schools of thought associated with this topic of culture and personality, to know about the contributions made by different schools, scholars, especially in this school of culture and personality, to know about the theories and the concepts propounded by the scholars related to the topic. Now, there are two important themes in this concept. One is culture, the other one is personality. Culture, as you all know, which is a set of practices, norms, values, which is learned, shared by members of a community, and you all know the standard definition given by E.B. Taylor, that culture or civilization is any quality or a characteristic which comprises art, belief, customs, knowledge, law and morality, or any other capability acquired by a member of society. On the other hand, we have the concept of personality. Personality per se, which comes under the psychological studies, which is defined as the sum total of all the aggregates, emotional, social, intellectual, cognitive aspects, all things makes under the concept of personality. These two things, now the whole debate in this school of thought is that whether personality is given or whether personality is being shaped by culture. Many anthropologists have taken this approach to study individuals' personality at a collective level in a given culture, and why certain people have these personality types in this culture and why certain people in another culture have that kind of set of personality types. So this is a combination of both psychological studies incorporated into anthropological understanding of the interplay between culture and personality. It was basically studied in psychological anthropology, which deals more of the individual psyche and the collective psyche in a given culture. Some anthropologists suggested that the basic model, personality model, while others anthropologists said that it is modal personality. So in this module, we will try to see the major contributions of Abraham Gardiner, Cora Dubois, Ralph Linton, Ruth Benedict, and Margaret Mead. Now, while we are studying culture and personality, some of the methods are being borrowed from the discipline of psychology. Psychology is basically mostly rely on experimental methods, which is basically observation methods both in natural settings, in artificial settings. It is, in that sense, culture and personality scholars are interested to see how people behave in natural settings and even in the other laboratory settings. So the methods in psychology which are completely different with classical anthropological studies, the methods like in-depth interviews, role play, general interviews, collecting elaborate biographies of individuals and community members of groups, studies of family roles, how particular individual performs a particular role, like a father, like a mother, like a brother, sister, grandfather, how these roles are played according to their, and what type of behavior is expected in given roles. And lastly, dream interpretation. This is very interesting. What kind of dreams people dream about? Are the dreams culture specific or dreams are universal, which is a unique study in psychology? And why people, whether dreams has any meaning to the reality? What we dream, which will it has any reality, immediate reality? In that sense, these methods are very unique in the study of psychology as a scientific discipline which is unique to its own discipline. Now, taking these methods from the discipline of psychology, culture and personality studies have beginnings with a great American linguist called Edward Sapir, which has seen that whether language is shaped by culture. What is the relation between culture and the language people speak? Why particular cultures have particular language? What kind of structure a particular language has? In that sense, Sapir's understanding of the interrelation between culture and language gave a new impetus to the culture and personality studies. The Sapirian understanding was basically taken from Gestalt school of psychology, where the psychology says that perception could be understood only when the separate elements but not as an organized pattern. So one looks at a particular phenomenon, when you look at a social reality, let's say one landscape painting, people only see as a whole, as a landscape. We don't look into the details of that. In a sense that Gestaltian says that the whole is important rather than the parts. So with these kind of understanding, Gestaltian principles to Sapir understanding and Sapir's link between language has been influenced by culture. So anthropologists of this school, culture and personality, has understood the process of how people have different personality types, people behave in different settings. The history of culture and personality studies goes back in 1920s, where they are mostly influenced with Sigmund Freud's understanding of the unconscious mind. Freud proposed that what is known as critical periods hypothesis, which states that human beings' personality is being thoroughly shaped by the kind of stages that a child passes through. So today, an adult personality is nothing but the kind of stages that one has to go is being passed. And what Sigmund Freud says that these are very critical in one's own life at an individual level. And every stage has its own unique ways of dealing the reality. So when the infants went through this time stage, these features are being transformed into the later adulthood. Whether the child is happy, whether the child is frustrated, Freudian understanding of personality says that whatever we acquire in the early formation of the child, which likely to be remained even at the later stages. Freudian understanding is also says that if a child was very happy throughout his early childhood days, pre-adolescent days, adolescent days, there is a likely chance that these adults are more have a good integrated personality, where compared to other children who do not have much difficulty in their later periods of life. Psychoanalysts believes that who are under Freudian thinking says that when they ask how happy were you when you are a child, that gives a clue to their personality. If I have a smooth transition from one stage to another stage in my early childhood days, and I have a happy section of these phases of my life into adulthood, I become more integrated personality and I'll be living with less conflicts. And my personality is more integrated and more cohesive than a child who has gone through critical phases, and the child goes through numerous conflicts during, he could not resolve all these conflicts in his in early childhood days. And this same understanding has took into anthropology, and we call it as psychoanalytic anthropology, and continues to draw this attention in contemporary anthropology as well. So this perspective is best demonstrated in the works of anthropologists such as Gregory Bateson, Ruth Benedict, Jeffrey Rohr, and Margaret Mead. They believe that personality, though it is very individualistic, but they have taken to a next level that culture influences individual's personality, and with that we can say that this culture has this kind of personality, that kind of individuals exhibit some sort of common features of that cultural attributes. Margaret Mead has become a main proponent when it comes to culture personality school. Mead says that different cultures, I mean societies, produce different personality types. As a result, we have different socialization process. Now, coming to the socialization process, how a particular child has been raised up. Gender-wise, how a child becomes an adult. What kind of training given by the elders of that particular given society or culture. That gives some kind of understanding of personality in the later stages of an individual's life as a whole. That is why when we look at a society from Mead's perspective, we can say that this society or this culture has people are like this. Why people are like that? It is nothing but their socialization process. How people have been raised up, what kinds of things they have been taught psychologically, along with the other cultural variables. So Mead draws two types of training processes in most of the cultures, saying that there is a dependence training and independence training by the elders to the young infants up to become the adult stages. Coming to the dependent training, in some cultures, the emphasis on compliance with the group norms and associated with the extended joint families. So right from the beginning, the child is being taught, these are the rules, you have to behave like this, you should not violate these things. If you violate this thing, something will happen. So there is some kind of a compliance created by the elders to the young people, I mean from infant stage to early or later adolescent period. So that becomes consolidified, commodified as a personality type, and we feel that at an individual level, oh, I should adhere to what my elders have told, or this is the norm which is prevailing in the society. Now, in the independence training, the another significant feature is that the children get extended care in the family and also get to learn many household chores early in their lives under the watchful gaze of their senior members. Now, in this process, what happens is that there is a constant vigilance by the elders. That means there is some kind of a continuous training, and they should not violate, they should not go deviant from the set norms or the standard norms of the culture. In a sense that the children internalize the whole cultural aspects of the society, which are manifested in the personality. That's what in the whole training aspect, which is the process which is given to these children at this stage. Negatively, certain behavior that may not be listed by the elders will be discouraged under such training. Now, what happens if any individual child or an adolescent deviates? He will be under scrutiny, and this will be severely punished or discouraged or become a deterrent, saying that this cannot be done. We can go on with many examples. What is acceptable? Socially acceptable behavior has been encouraged. Now, at the end of the day, what happens in the dependence training is that all the children are given a thorough socialization process that you have to obey your elders. You have to adhere to the norms and values and rules and regulations of that society. In a sense, people are dependent. There is no individuality which is coming out of this whole socialization process. If you look at the other side of the independent training, in some societies or in cultures where right from the early beginning of an infant stage, the adult members of that group encourages independence, self-reliance, and personal achievements. Right from the childhood, elders are being thoroughly encouraged this young one. You do this, you do that, you have to do that, you have to do this, you have to be on your own. No one will help you, you have to go independently. So that kind of a sense early part of your life makes the child independent. Self-worth. I am good for something. I can do many things. That kind of an impingement gives to the individual by their elders at a collective level makes these people more independent rather than dependent, which we see in other types of cultures. Display of aggression and sexuality are tolerated under such training if not encouraged actively. At the same time, discipline and aggression are also being taught, that how to control a controlled aggression and exhibit individual sexuality, which is not at a deviant level. They are also encouraged that you have to be like sexually identifiable, that you are so and so, that you have to express your needs. That is also an independent training at appropriate times. You should not inhibit your sexual feelings, but rather you have to exhibit your sexual feelings at appropriate times in appropriate methods. That is an independent way of dealing or making children to become purposeful and meaningful citizens of in a given culture. Oral gratification of the children is subjected to routine and not demanded or need of the children, where they receive inadequate attention of the adults and elders. They do not get to learn household tasks, etc. Now let us look at various anthropologists and their approaches towards understanding culture and personality interaction. Abraham Gardiner says that basic personality structure model, how individuals' basic personality at a collective level and what kind of structure it has. Even Ralph Linton also goes with the same concept, basic personality structure model. Then again we have Cora Dubois, which proposes that model personality of a given culture. Margaret Mead compares American adolescents with Samoan adolescents, especially with the girls. And Ruth Benedict comes with her own approach, what is called as patterns of culture. Abraham Gardner has been very influential in the whole culture and personality school. He was very much into a psychoanalytic method, Freudian analysis, influenced by Freudian training and Freudian understanding of individual psyche and collective psyche from a civilization point of view. Gardner, along with Linton, published an important work called The Individual and Society, which is a landmark publication in culture and personality school of thought, especially in anthropology. Gardner basically looked at the way in which personality types are present in culture patterns. So Gardner was interested in what type of personality types individual possess at a collective level. So Gardner introduced the basic idea of, or what we call the basic personality structure, where the members of a particular culture or a particular society shares several fundamental personality traits. If you go to the society and see, most of the people have the same personality traits. So what does it mean? Men, women, everyone have the same personality types. They're exhibiting the same behavior. So then we can know, or we can come to an understanding that there is some kind of commonality existing between these people. So this gave this idea that culture's basic personality structure. As we understand, personalities though is individualistic, but why does everyone has the same personality traits? Gardner was inspired by the work of Freud, which says that basically the primary socialization process or the primary institution like social institution like family, where an important training takes place for the infant at the early stages of life, which is very crucial in shaping up an individual's personality. The same training is also being given by the other families in that given culture. In that sense, one has to understand that the personality type is being influenced by the given culture. Now, Gardner wants to see what are the primary institutions and what are the secondary institutions, and what kind of training which is being given and how they are influenced by these primary and secondary social institutions in any given culture. For example, in primary institutions, family is the first and foremost social institutions in a society and for the individual. The family shapes the basic personality structure of the society. So we can simply say that, according to Gardner, if you look at the family, it is like a reflection of the society. In these primary institutions, we can also see, though there is conflict with one another, but there is some kind of shared unconscious conflicts and anxieties. All the members can share the same anxiety. All the members have the same unconscious conflict, which can be understood. How a child has been brought up, what we call child rearing practices. Today, in contemporary anthropology, we say that tribal societies have a different child rearing practices, rural societies, we have different child rearing practices, urban societies, we have a different child rearing practices. So what does it mean? So how the children are being reared, how the children are given training to help themselves. Example, toilet training, gender-wise toilet training, how boys are being taught, how girls are being taught. This gives a clue to all these kinds of understanding of how personality has formed, how personality has been shaped, how personality has been taken from one level to the next level, in a sense that the whole infant stage to the pre-adulthood and later adulthood and to the rest of the life. If you look at the secondary institutions, and these institutions are produced in the process of shaping personality structure, these institutions also helps the individuals to confront their conflicts and anxieties, religion, law, other forms of norms and ways of living, which makes them, yes, if you have an anxiety, you have to deal like this. If you have a conflict, this is the thing, mechanism that you have to deal, which has also been expressed in rituals, certain folk tales. We can see how individuals resolve their conflicts through certain folk tales of a given society or certain rituals in the society. Another major anthropologist who has contributed immensely to culture and personality studies is Ralph Linton. Interestingly, Ralph Linton was, when he started his career, he was an archaeologist. Later on, he shifted his interest and studies to cultural anthropology. Linton's work is mostly centered around Polynesia and Madagascar, and some of the archaeological expeditions in Latin America and in United States as well. Linton, along with Gardner, argued that while culture and personality are simply integrated, there was a specific causal relationship between them. What do we mean by causal relationship? What is the cause and what is the effect? There is a simple logic in that. Without something, nothing will come out. How can people have this personality? That means if people have personality, means there is something is there. So what was that something and why this thing? So there is a cause and relationship aspect with the culture and personality. So we can understand in this relationship of cause and effect relationship between these two. Both Linton and Gardner expressed that the basic personality is being shaped or groomed with the primary institution, or the basic personality structure can be understood by looking at what are the primary social institutions, while the secondary institutions are nothing but the basic personality structures. So once we have the product of basic personality structure, which comes from the primary institutions, and this people gives the secondary institutions like family, marriage, religion, law, that shows your personality types. So in that sense, there is a sequence followed from primary institutions give basic personality, and this basic personality gives the secondary institutions. So there is a logical coherence between these two types of personality issues. Another important prominent anthropologist who has significantly or immensely contributed is Ruth Benedict. Benedict proposes that every culture brings unique pattern of personality or unique pattern of cultural configuration. This culture has unique cultural configuration, that culture has unique. Culture A has unique cultural configuration, culture B has What I mean to say, society B, society A in any given geographical area. Each culture has a set of unique cultural configurations, which she calls as patterns. And the fundamental personality characteristics of these people grow up in the culture are nothing but the product of this given cultural configuration. So here two important things have emerged from Benedict's theoretical perspective. She says that to understand personality, first you have to understand what does this culture is made up of. You cannot understand personality without understanding the cultural configuration parallelly. So first have a complete understanding of the cultural configuration which shapes this unique cultural product which is in the form of the personality of the people have. So in this way she combines this what we call patterns of culture and given the product of personality people have. Benedict's famous work is Patterns of Culture, very outstanding book. And culture promotes a personality type, again falling in line with Linton and Gardner. Benedict suggests that there is a consistency between the culture one individual grow up, you or me or she or he or anyone who grew up in a given culture, and the emotions we exhibit, the emotions we feel. So this is the first time she talks of the emotions in a given culture. So in the work of Patterns of Culture, she explained that culture is unique pattern which can be later configured. So a basic individual emotion which we express or which we exhibit or which we feel by an individual are nothing but the product of the culture which all other members also exhibit at the same level. Maybe the degree differs a little bit, but at the whole everyone has the same emotion or the type. So coming back to the cultural configuration, this thing will not only deal with the fundamental personality characteristics of people which grow up in different cultures, but also how they express the underlying ideas, values, which we say that yes, this is a typical society. We can go on with the different examples. Culture A is like this, culture B is like this, people are like that, people are like that, cold, hot. Why? Aggressive, violent, non-violent. Why people have these kinds of different personality types? What makes them they are very cooperative? What makes them they are very sublime? What makes them they are passive? What makes them they are like this? So that means there is another feature, that which she says that how a culture was configured and how people raised. What are the primary institutions? What are the secondary institutions? If you go back to Abraham, Gardner and Linton, which has been again given by at a larger level by Benedict, says that one has to look into the configuration of the culture to understand individuals' personality at a collective level. Another important anthropologist which has contributed to culture and personality is Cora Dubois. Cora Dubois has given, under the ages of psychoanalytic study of culture, very important work is The People of Allure. Cora Dubois proposed a concept called modal personality, which is nothing to do with MODEL, but it has to be understood MODAL, modal personality. The modal personality, which is given by Cora Dubois, is a type of personality that is statistically the most certain in a society. If we look at one individual and we see all the traits, we go on to the another individual and we see another same traits like that. So if you look at from a statistical point of view also, more or less on an average we get the same result. So in that sense, Cora Dubos says that people have this modal personality. Cora Dubos argued with the concept of primary institutions lead to the formation of basic characteristics. She did recognize that each person's own personality is developed and expressed in unique way, leading to variation in personality within a society. She did not deny that there are no individual personalities. Individual personalities were also there. But this idea is modified with the concept of modal personality while based on assumptions that psychic unity of mankind. Taking goes back to that all human beings or have an unseen unity, in a sense that most of the social institutions, most of the social relations we have, there are many similarities and we can see these similarities. No matter we have this psychic unity, but did she say that there are certain individual differences? But as a whole, there is a psychic unity of mankind. Where an infant is like a blank state which can be put all the experiences and we can see all the observable effects when the child grows up. Taking further this Cora Dubos model, we have another significant or prominent anthropologist which comes immediately when we say culture and personality is Margaret Mead. Mead, in her work in the coming of age in Samoa, takes a comparative perspective of adolescent girls in a small Samoan culture and the larger United States American culture. Whether personality is universal, personality types, adolescence is universal, or adolescence is different in one culture and in another culture. If adolescents behave or exhibit some kind of personality features in the cultures, it should be same in another culture also. But Mead's work shows that Samoan culture has a different adolescent exhibition than with American counterpart. The typical classical psychological understanding of adolescent is that adolescence is nothing but stress and storm. The standard way of adolescent period is that adolescence has to deal with a lot of stress and storm. And this phase is much like you have to deal with many conflicts, many issues, sexual issues, social issues, moral issues. All these issues are there in standard American culture. But at the same time, this is completely absent in the Samoan culture, where adolescence is a completely happy state of period. There is no stress at all. And the transition is very, very smooth. And it is easy sexual maturation in Samoan culture. But on the other hand, the American culture, which is full of these taboos, this thing, that thing, and which inhabits all kinds of sexual orientations and sexual feelings. And that is why she says that American culture is, American adolescents have more stress and strain in the cultural setup and in the brought up compared to a small society like Samoan culture. And how adolescents grow up in Samoa, in these islands. So that is a clear indication that personality or our ways of acting and our ways of feeling are dependent upon the kind of culture that we live in. Culture makes us whether we are free, culture makes us whether we are so and so, so and so and all. So personality is nothing but the product of the culture. This is a unique classical example challenging the universal notion of that adolescence is a stress and strain period, which is being ethnographically shown to the whole world, that if that is the same, that why it is absent in Samoan. So something is unique in Samoan culture, Samoan upbringing, why adolescents are stress free, they don't have any hang-ups. And why this set of people are like this? Is it with a family, or is it with a social structure, or is it with a religion? Why is it like this? So hence all these things together makes an adolescent personality to behave in such a way. On the other hand, what makes this culture, which allows the individual freedom, individual transition very smooth when compared with the other American culture counterpart. Lastly, we have one psychologist which has also been trained by psychoanalytic tradition, called Erik Erikson, which has given 8 stages of development, how one's individual personality is being developed, and how we can see in what stage the child goes on with this what we call psychosexual stages. Now he takes on both Freudian concept and Erikson concept, that uh, the role of culture and society and how conflicts can take place in the ego itself. But at Freudian level, Freud says that at an individual level, it is the conflict between the id and superego. Freudian concept of id, ego, and superego. But Erikson concept is mostly with the how cultures takes these things to individual and at a community level. So Erikson says that these are the psychosocial stages, but Freud says that these are the psychosexual stages. It is not very important in anthropology to study Erikson's all the study stages. I'll just spell out. I don't want to explain in detail why this stage, why that stage at an individual level, uh, from an Erikson point of view. He says that during infancy level, the basic virtue should be hope. So with this hope, the child has two types of crisis. One is trust, the other one is mistrust. Whom to trust, whom not to trust at an infancy stage. In the early childhood stage, the basic virtue is will. In that sense, the child is being in a crisis whether to feel shame or to feel autonomy. In the playful stage, after the earlyhood stage, the basic virtue is purpose. In that, Erikson says that the child has a crisis between taking initiative or feeling guilt, whether the child is guilt feeling or he is more of initiative kind. In the school age, there is a basic virtue is competency, and within this competency there is two kinds of crisis takes place within the child, whether to be industrious or whether to feel inferior or to fall back or to move forward. So the child will have these psychosocial stages of in this conflict crisis. The next stage is the adolescent stage, where the basic virtue is fidelity, where the child has crisis whether he identifies his ego or he is a confused stage. What does to do, what not to do, all these things. Or he is fully convinced that I have an ego, I my all these things. When the child becomes a young adult, the basic virtue is love. In that sense, whether he has a close relationship with the opposite gender or he feels isolated. If the child is very smart enough and he has a more independent, he has an intimate relationship with the opposite gender, or if he cannot resolve this crisis, he becomes isolated for a longer period of time. The next stage is the early adulthood or adulthood, where the virtue is care, whether he is generating this care to others or he is at a stagnation. So this crisis has to be dealt at this particular stage. After the long prolonged adulthood, when people become old, the basic virtue is we gain wisdom. At the end of the age, when people become elderly and old, says that have wisdom. And with this wisdom, the social crisis is that whether I have a successful life when I look back, or I look back in despair that what did I live? How did I live? So, in these kinds of 8 stages, what Erik Erikson has proposed, which is mostly psychological at an individual level, but it can be spill over to collective level also, whether all cultures have this same kind of a setup or not, from a Freudian perspective. Another important psychological anthropologist, what we call is Clyde Kluckhohn, which his famous book is The Mirror for Man, which is a basic textbook for all anthropology students. That anthropology is nothing but mirror for man. Like anthropology as a subject is a mirror. When we look, it reflects our own image. When we study other cultures, it means so. It is a beautiful book, or the title is Mirror for Man. And the other two books is, one is this Foot of the Rainbow and How Does It Spread, Beyond the Rainbow, and is also co-edited with Personality, Nature, Society and Culture with Henry Murray, where he demonstrated that there is varieties found within culture and personality. To widen this concept, he emphasized the affinity between anthropology and psychiatry. And psychiatry deals with all kinds of abnormalities where in a given culture, the deviance, all the psychological disorders, how people manifest, how do they diagnose these psychiatric disorders. In The Mirror for Man, he declared that anthropology was no longer just the science of long ago and far away, but it was said and aid for useful action. Anthropology is not a dead subject, but it is a very vibrant, very emergent subject where it is useful for the whole humankind. Where Clyde Cochran has given more importance to the life history method and concerned with the documenting variations with the life history orientation. So, why particular life histories in that culture is different with another particular culture? So, life history method is a very unique method in understanding the culture and personality aspects from psychological anthropology, which has given a very good understanding to unravel the cultural process, both individual and at the collective level. Kluckhohn is also convinced the existence of certain affinities between, as I said, basically between psychiatry and anthropology, and he is interested with the total personality or the concept of the whole man. Why cultures have this integrating aspect? What is this integrating principle? Which are implicit in every culture. What makes these features which are unique in that culture, which are ingrained, which are implicit, and which are being transformed to the individuals? So, in that sense, Kluckhohn's understanding, combining, taking the psychiatric understanding of personality formation, personality disorders, personality makeup, or good understanding of various aspects of culture and personality school. So, in summary, we can conclude that all the contributions given by anthropologists, right from Benedict, Margaret Mead, Cora Dubois, Abraham Gardner, Kluckhohn, basically stress one emerging feature, that culture shapes personality. Though personality is an individual aspect, but this individual characteristic attributes can be seen, most of the attributes other members also. How does it takes? It is how people are being assimilated. It is how the people are being given training. It is how the individuals have this psychological makeup early from the young stage, infant stage to the young adulthood. So, culture and personality school has widened the dimensions of how individual behavior is manifested collectively, mostly uniformly, in each and every specific culture. The moment we say that this culture are like this, that culture are like this, it is nothing but their personality types. So in that, lot of concepts have emerged: the modal personality, the psychic unity of mankind. Personality at the adolescent is different from one culture to another culture. We have seen Erickson's model, we have seen Sigmund Freud's model, and we have seen how the psychological methods are used in cultural settings, in natural settings, and how people resolve their life crisis and conflicts through their socialization process, which is a key understanding in the entire range of culture and personality school.